Here we have the lecture portion for World War II presentations. As we continue to work on presentations, we will see improvement in soft skills. Let's get into the lecture portion. For the most part, it's going to be Germany, Italy, Japan, and they are going to make up the Axis power. Here we have the three leaders. For Japan, who is going to be the first aggressor, using these maps, we see that Japan is limited with its resources, and some of those resources seem to be plentiful here. Japan is going to attack Manchuria and then proceed south into Indochina, and this is going to be a war for imperialism, a war of aggression. Italy will be the second aggressor. Italy is going to attack Ethiopia, and what would possibly be a war crime, as their conduct during World War II seems to be questionable with the targeting of civilians. However, that was not uncommon during the conflict. Aggression by Italy and Japan would go unchecked by the League of Nations. Germany would be third as the aggressive Axis power. Their main issue stems from the anger over the Treaty of Versailles. This list represents the areas that Germany would go into. Some would be by force, for example, Poland as well as Russia. However, the people of Austria seem to be willing to be annexed by Germany. You may encounter this term, treat it like a definition. It represents the annexation of Austria, and notice how the Austrians seem to be celebrating with this particular parade as Germany is getting ready to take over Austria and consolidate it into what is eventually going to become the German Empire. For the most part, World War II causes are going to be about imperialism. We have World War I compared to World War II, and you're going to see some differences with regard to how the war begins, the Treaty of Versailles linking World War I to World War II, but then that Germany would commit a genocide, as well as all three nations targeting civilians in a total war campaign. The United States would not get involved in the conflict until Pearl Harbor. Prior to that, the United States was trading using cash and carry and lend and lease programs. World War II technology would definitely improve as we start to see aircraft carriers being developed, submarines, bigger bombs, and the main one being the atomic bomb. The final solution was going to be the plan for Germany to eliminate all of Europe's Jewish population. The final solution would be determined after the WWII conference. The use of aircraft carriers during World War II, as we see the plane is going to be used for aerial bombing as well as reconnaissance, a little different from World War I, especially when you can launch them from a vessel. World War II is also going to be the start of nuclear technology, as well as weapons and armaments are concerned. Lisa Meitner working with the Germans to try to help Germany develop a atomic bomb. Here we see her contribution in the area of nuclear fission. As mentioned before, targeting civilians was not uncommon during World War II. Here we see the bombing of Dresden, which was a cultural center for Germany. Here we see a top-down view of what that city looks like. As the United States entered the conflict, the women of the United States would be mobilized to produce a series of U.S. armaments. Here we see the image of Rosie the Riveter and all of the women working on the assembly line for these planes. And what these women are doing is they are piecing together the metal using a series of rivets and a rivet gun, hence the name Rosie the Riveter. During World War II, the United States would ration certain war-related materials. Here we have a more contemporary Airstream trailer, which basically is a camper that you can hook up to the back of your vehicle. But during World War II, because certain metals were going to be needed for the war effort, rationing led to less production of certain goods, and I'm using the Airstream as an example of rationing. Mexican migration to the United States would be encouraged through the Bracero program, as laborers are going to leave to fight World War II, this is going to provide a labor shortage in the United States, and the United States is going to increase the Mexican migration to the United States to fill the void. This would ultimately lead to the Zoot Suit riots, and the Zoot Suits represent a jacket and pair of pants that seems to use a little bit more fabric than normal. So I'm going to draw the pants very close to the jacket, and the clothing may or may not have been rationed. And so the question here is whether or not these protesters are targeting Mexicans because they're Mexican, or is it because they are just not following the rationing policies by making these Zoot Suits. Some propaganda posters, this one here showing the rationing, another one with rationing, as well as the Axis power enemy, a World War II DC memorial, where we have the pillars representing different states. Another topic comparing Star Wars imagery to World War II. Here we see a Nazi helmet, very similar in the back to the helmet of Darth Vader. During World War II, the United States would place Japanese American citizens in internment camps. This is what this map here is trying to represent, primarily because Japanese would be targeted, as well as concern about them being spies. And here we see an image of the internment camps. Holocaust art. Here we have a depiction of the concentration camps. A Holocaust memorial in DC. In this room, you just have a series of photographs representing families that were negatively impacted by the eventual Holocaust. And as I mentioned before, crime against humanity, war crimes. These were methods for fighting the war where civilians were targeted, and it's going to blur the line with these definitions. Keep in mind the definition of genocide does not exist at this point. During the genocide committed by the Nazis, they would adopt the eugenics policies and euthanasia, a mercy killing. The eugenics movement, a movement designed to manipulate genes to get a desired outcome. And a lot of the Nazi laws represented eugenics theory, as well as euthanasia for German citizens and victims of occupied areas who represented medical conditions that the Nazis wanted to eliminate from their gene pool. On this slide, we have an example of the Nazi law, as well as the medical conditions that the Germans targeted. Mr. Lemkin, who would eventually come up with the term genocide as a result of the killing that took place during World War II. The Nuremberg trials was a way to go after Nazi officials as well as Italian and Japanese, but for the most part we're looking at the Nuremberg trials with regard to targeting German leaders, politicians, military officials, and trying to hold them accountable for their war crimes, crimes against humanity, as well as genocidal acts. One of the methods used to gas human beings would be Zyklon B, a pesticide, and here we have a timeline representing the German-Jewish progression, where they are first German citizens. The Nuremberg laws remove that status. They become second-class citizens, and before you know it, we get closer and closer to the final solution. The final solution was determined and finalized at the Wannsee Conference, led by this man, Reinhard Heydrich. He would receive orders from Adolf Hitler to develop this plan, and he invited all of these individuals to attend. Each one played a key role in the planning of this genocide. The Atlantic Charter, a document that is going to be of more concern during the Cold War. And for the most part, what this document is doing is it's saying that the British and the Americans are trying to get away from imperialism. This looks to be a revisiting of Woodrow Wilson's self-determination. As it mentions here, that they respect the right of all people to choose the form of government under which they will live. The Mattachine Society, a gay rights organization that would develop in the 1950s, primarily because after World War II, numerous World War II veterans were kicked out of the military if they were identified as being gay. And that led to the establishment of two organizations that would eventually spawn into this Mattachine Society. The Veterans Benevolent Association of New York. When we use the term veteran, we're talking about someone who served in the U.S. military. As homosexuals were identified, they would be given a blue discharge that would identify their removal from service being connected to homosexuality. The Manhattan Project, the plan by the United States to develop a nuclear weapon, which was led by Robert Oppenheimer. We have the film trailer here. Curtis LeMay, the commanding Air Force soldier who would eventually have the atomic bomb dropped under his command, as well as Robert McNamara. This link comes from the movie The Fog of War. So McNamara and LeMay were instrumental in developing the firebombing of Japan, as well as the eventual bombing on Hiroshima as well as Nagasaki. Here we have a memorial dedicated to Hiroshima. The structure here after the bombing that has been preserved. World War II will lead to the development of the United Nations. The United Nations having a Security Council where there are 5 nations. Britain, France, Russia, the United States, and China would all have permanent veto power within the United Nations Security Council. And that's it for the World War II presentations.